But we were like, you know what, we've got nothing to lose. We are at the end of the world, so like we might as well give it a try. We left France. We went through Europe, crazy 24-hour train that's called the Doğu Expressi, Turkey, through Russia, and then we reached Kazakhstan. From there, you reach China. I see this guy wearing a cap, like an officer. He asks me to follow him to like a very kind of dark room inside the station. And we were, warned that we had high chances of meeting spies.
Welcome to Travel Devil. I'm your host Clara Francken, and in a world full of mass tourism, we're here to talk about unconventional travel. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Travel Devil, Victor Figèra.
Thank you, Clara.
I'm so happy to have you today on the podcast. Today we're going to talk about long-distance traveling by train. Victor, together with your girlfriend Leah, You traveled all the way from France to Taiwan.
Yeah.
Over 50,000 kilometers, which is 31,000 miles. You're a traveler, you're a cook working with Soja, you're into sustainability. Can you introduce yourself with your own words?
Sure, yeah. Well, thanks for having me first, Clara. That's very nice of you to welcome me on this podcast. So I feel very honored. And I will be speaking on behalf of Leah, just like you said, but she couldn't make it today, unfortunately. So hopefully my words will reflect her thoughts as well. So my name is Victor. I'm 29 years old. I did my studies in social sciences, mostly a bit of business as well. And I'm changing careers now to become a professional tofu maker in Poitiers, which is a medium-sized city in France, because I'm French too. And Leah, my girlfriend, is actually, right now she's working in her new salon de thé, so pastry shop, basically, based in Poitiers as well, which is entirely vegan. And so those two projects, me being a tofu maker and her being a pastry chef, really stem from this journey that we started in September 2023, when we started this journey all the way to Taiwan. And we came back from this journey in June 2024.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit more about your background with traveling? Did you travel a lot when you were a kid?
I did travel a lot when I was a kid, especially by plane, and that was bad. That was really bad, especially during my studies, because part of my studies were in Hong Kong. So when I was in Hong Kong being like a platform from which it's very easy to get to Taiwan, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, you name it. I used to take a lot of planes to go all around Southeast Asia, mostly. And so my carbon footprint is just horrendous, frankly speaking. Leah, on the other hand, she didn't travel much when she was younger and even later on, but she did take a lot of trains during her childhood because her father lives in Brussels, Belgium. So she would live in Paris back then, and she would take the Thalys train every week or so to see him. So we both had different experiences of traveling, her being a lot by train and me being a lot by plane. But we both stopped taking planes. We stopped flying in 2019 for environmental reasons mostly. And so that was a commitment for us to start this journey without taking any plane, if possible.
Yeah. But it's beautiful that you could do that together with someone and hold on to each other for that as well, I think. That's amazing. Okay. And your passion for train travel, your personal passion, when did that start?
Pretty recently, to be honest, because 5 years ago or something like that, we kind of decided with Leah that we would go on a yearly pilgrimage to Italy because it's very close to France, and we would always like once a year we would go to Italy by train, and so that became kind of a habit for us, and we really loved that experience because you just take a train all the way to Nice, so southeast France on the Riviera, and then you take a second train to cross the border, and then you take the Trenitalia, and you go across beautiful landscapes and all. Our experience with Italy really kind of built this passion for train travel, both of us.
And then you decided one day, okay, we're going all the way to Taiwan. How did that happen?
Well, So Leah, she saw this pastry shop that was being sold in Poitiers.
Poitiers in France.
Yeah, in France. Yeah, actually, the same pastry shop that she ended up buying, but it was way before that. And so she was almost like she was on the verge of buying it and start her own business. But then I don't know, it was just too much of a hassle, and she felt really pressured into buying it. And she was like, you know what, fuck it, let's just take a year of travel or so. First, it was supposed to be 6 months, and she said to me, you're almost done with your current job. I'm done with my current job. Let's go on a try. Let's go on a crazy trip, like a once in a lifetime trip. Because also she knows that I've been wanting to go back to Hong Kong for a while now because I really miss the city that I lived in for 2 years, from 2017 to 2019. And so she said, you know what? Let's go to Hong Kong. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's try that. I mean, also because part of her family lives in Georgia. And she was like, it's kind of like in the middle. So if we reach Georgia, maybe we could reach Hong Kong then. So that was how it started.
Yeah.
And there was like also a lot of different motives. There was like a professional motive because I also wanted to get trained into tofu making, traditional tofu making, which can kind of only be done in Asia, Eastern Asia mostly, at least the proper way. Leah wanted to know more about tea making. So that was a professional motive. There was family motive because a lot of family is in Georgia. There was also a transportation challenge being like, what if it was possible to go all the way, literally all across the globe, like without flying. And last but not least, it was a food motive because we're both vegetarians, vegan. I'm a vegan and she's a vegetarian. And it was a challenge for us to kind of think, okay, is it possible to go that far without consuming any animal products, if possible? So that was like a triple or maybe like four challenges at the time.
Yeah, that's bringing up a lot of questions already directly. I first want to get into the fact that you were mentioning Hong Kong now. Before we said, okay, you're doing the whole journey to Taiwan. So you first arrived to Hong Kong and then you decided to continue to Taiwan for some reason. Can you explain what went on over there?
That's a good question too. So originally the plan was to go to Hong Kong, and we actually named that journey La Route du Soja, the soy road, being a bad pun around the Silk Road because we're both into soy milk, soy like bean curds, tofu, that sort of things. And so we wanted to go to Hong Kong because there's also quite a lot of vegan pastry shops in Hong Kong. So Leah was very interested in it. And I wanted to find a workshop in Hong Kong where I could find a tofu master that could teach me how to make tofu. Unfortunately for me, I couldn't find any, but I did find one in Taiwan through Woofing actually. So that's how we thought, well, we might as well just go a bit further now that we're in Hong Kong.
Yeah. Can I just quickly interrupt you there? Woofing, I know what it is, but can you explain to the listeners who don't know what woofing is?
It's basically a concept where it's a platform online where you can reach out to farmers and they can host you in exchange of you working at the farm. So you're being hosted for free and fed. They give you accommodation in general, and in exchange, every morning you work at the farm doing farm work basically.
And in your case, you learned how to work with soya in exchange for staying there, or how did that work?
It was a bit it was a bit shady, to be honest, because moving Taiwan is not as like, how can I put this? It's not as neat as woofing France or woofing, I don't know, whatever, the UK. So I was basically hosted at a farm that just grew vegetables, but the farm was also involved in a small tofu workshop in the same village. And so through that farm, I could actually work every morning at the tofu shop. So it was like a kind of a crooked woofing experience. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And you arrived all the way to Taiwan. You probably took lots of trains, also ships, I'm guessing. Can you take me through the countries you had to pass to get there?
Yeah. So that was the main question, the main issue for us, because when we left France back in September 2023, we knew there was a ferry going through the Caspian Sea, which is For those who don't know, which was our case when we left France, it's so to see that's right in between Europe and Asia, to put it like simply. There was this one ferry that could avoid going through Iran southwards or through Russia northwards, because back at the time and still now it's kind of like it's not very recommended to go through those countries. Unfortunately, the country from which you could take that ferry, Azerbaijan, closed its land borders. Like it's still like it was closed when we left, but it remained closed all that time. So we could not take that ferry. We had to go through Russia a bit. So what we did is like we left France, we went through Europe quite straightforward, and then we reached Turkey. We took a crazy 24-hour train that's called the Doğu Expressi, which gets you through the entire country in 24 hours. It costs like 15 euros, and it's like probably the most beautiful sceneries that we've seen on a train through this journey. I would definitely recommend, like, if anyone has got some spare time, it's not that far away. You can get to Istanbul within 3 days, and from Istanbul you reach Ankara, the capital city, and then it only takes you like 24 hours to cross the entire of Turkey. Anyway, so we took the Doğu Expressi, and then we reached the far east of Turkey, from which we took a bus to Georgia. We stayed there quite a long time because we wanted to see Leah's family, to visit them. And then from Georgia, we figured out that there was no other way to get to Asia than going through Russia. So that was when it got a bit tricky, because you need to get a visa for Russia. And obviously at that time, applying for a visa was not very common, especially for Russia. But we managed to get our transit visa because obviously we're not very at ease. We're not very comfortable to crossing a country at war with Ukraine. So we said, okay, you know what? We're just going to spend as little time as possible in Russia. So we only stayed 3 days, which is the minimum you can do. You can't do it faster. And so we crossed just the southern part of Russia, and then we reached Kazakhstan. And from Kazakhstan, it's very straightforward. We took another crazy 42-hour train that would just go through the entire Kazakhstan, and from there you reach China pretty easily, and from China you go south all the way to Hong Kong. And finally, the last but not least also step was to reach Taiwan, because back at the time, there was no evidence that there was any ferry going to Taiwan, basically, because of like all the diplomatic tensions between mainland China and Taiwan, and also because of COVID a long time ago, there didn't seem to be any ferry operating. Somehow we heard from like an official, like a Taiwanese official, that there might be a ferry in this town called Fuzhou in China, and it was very kind of unclear because his English was not so good and everything. So, but we were like, you know what, we've got nothing to lose. We are at the end of the world, so like we might as well give it a try. So we went back to China from Hong Kong, and we went to this town called Fuzhou, and we ended up in this kind of like a no man's land where there was definitely a ferry leaving, not on that day, but on the next day. And so that's how we ended up in Taiwan, and we're very, very happy about it, because back then, like almost no one had done it. At least we couldn't find any information on the internet. And so we're very proud of like reaching Taipei, the capital city of Taiwan. That
Yeah,
kind
I
of
can imagine.
signed the end of the journey.
I can imagine. I think that shows again that the internet can give you a lot of tools, but you also need to talk to locals when you're traveling, definitely in such a situation.
Yeah, especially because all the information that you can find on the internet, it gets, outdated very quickly.
Yeah. I was also thinking when you were casually mentioning like, oh, it's only 3 days to get to Turkey and it's only like 40 hours in Kazakhstan, some other train. And you're mentioning this in a way that it seems like, oh, it's only this amount of time. But I think for a lot of people, that's a lot of time sitting in a train.
Yeah, that is obviously that is, yeah.
Yeah. What do you do during all this time? Like, what is what's going on when you're just sitting 40 hours in one train? Like,
Yeah, I was very surprised because, I thought that I would get really bored like very easily. The truth is we didn't get bored any time. I think there was not a single time, even in 42-hour long trains. I don't think we got bored a single time because there's always something to do. We were, chatting, so to speak, with locals because obviously it's very difficult sometimes to, get to know each other, not speaking the language ourselves, be it in Central Asia or even in Russia and that sort of things. So you can, I don't know, try to speak to locals. You can play games. We had like games with us, small cardboard games. We could read too. We had like Kindles. We read a lot during this trip. Listen to music and also just watch the landscapes because there's something quite fascinating about being in a train for 42 hours, just watching Kazakh steppes, just like passing by and passing by. It's like almost meditative or some kind of like it's quite fascinating. Yeah.
yeah. No, I totally get you. When comparing it even to like the typical airplane mode of going in the plane and then you're just arriving and you don't even see how the scenery is changing. I also feel that very much when I'm traveling by train. I really love that I'm feeling the travel instead of just being transported to the new destination. So it's a whole different experience. And I feel like you already get to know the country a little bit before entering the country. Whereas when you're traveling by plane, you're just arriving there and you're ready to go, you're ready to start, but it's like somebody put you just in this new place.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was the most fascinating thing for us, really, to see all the landscapes evolving as we were passing by, on trains. Also watching like people changing because you could see all the ethnicities like kind of moving and changing from train to train as we could go. Also, one thing with the weather that was really impressive, and we arrived in Hong Kong in something like December, and it was crazy because you could feel that we were kind of like we were chased by the seasons. So basically, it was always kind of I don't know. We didn't really have a proper winter because when we arrived, like when we reached Hong Kong, it was already kind of still like it's the opposite like weather-wise as in France. So when it's December, it's like still very warm and that sort of things. So it was like this whole thing with the climate was just crazy because you could feel that we were kind of escaping from the cold weather that was behind us, and we were like just going fast and forward. But no, I totally get what you said about the getting to know the country even before you're entering it. You enter it properly.
Yeah, and I'm sure you had a lot of beautiful moments on the road and maybe also a lot of difficult moments. I want to end with the positive part and maybe start by talking about difficult times. Can you give me an example of a country which caused you a lot of problems when traveling through it?
Well, we thought it would be Russia, but in the end, it turned out to be, I think, China. We love China. We loved it so much. But so one anecdote that I like to tell is at the border between Kazakhstan and China. So on the way in. So so yeah, that's a long anecdote, but I'm trying to make it short. So we had to take a 24-hour bus to go from Kazakhstan to China. And so from Almaty, which is a town east of Kazakhstan, to Urumqi, which is the capital city of the Uyghur province of Xinjiang in China. So it's like a very tense region because there was the whole, Uyghur situation with all the deported people in camps, that sort of things. So we were like really freaking out and we were really scared about entering China that way, but it was the only way that we had to. So we had to take this 24-hour bus. And the thing is, maybe 15 minutes before the bus left, I wanted to pee. And so I went not in the proper toilets of the station because it was really dirty. But I found this like small, I don't know, like very tiny forest next to the station. And the thing is, when I turned back, I see this guy wearing a cap, and it's definitely some guy belonging to the station, like an officer. He asks me to follow him to like like a very kind of dark room inside the station. He literally grabbed me by the hand. Like I had no option of like just getting back to the bus. I could only tell Leah that I would be back soon. Obviously, it didn't happen, but so that was like 10 minutes before the bus left. And the guys start, so he brings me to that room where four other guys are just sitting there, arms crossed, and definitely waiting for a white tourist to what was that, like, to just
Give them money?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Money, money, money.
It was like bribing, like, to the fullest. So he asks me to pay him $50, which I was not happy to give, first of all, because it was just like I was just being in a forest. And also I didn't have that money, basically, because we had exchanged all our money, like cash, into yuan, which is the Chinese currency. So I only had the equivalent of 17 euros in cash. And at first I was like, you know what, I don't have $50. Please just let me go back to my bus and I'll give you what I have in yuan and you will just exchange it something into Kazakh money. But he didn't want to. And then Leah somehow found me and she just enters the room and she's like, what the fuck is going on? We're leaving. The bus is leaving and the driver is angry at me. And so I'm like, I just got bribed and they want me to pay them like a lot of money. And she just started to cry, actually. She burst out into crying. And somehow this really kind of triggered all the police officers that were there. And they started to consider like the money that I had to give them. And they were like, oh, you know what, 17 euros? And they were like kind of doing the maths in their head. And finally they were like, okay, you know what, take the bus. And they just took the money back. Also, what I didn't mention is that I made a mistake. I gave them my passport because they asked for it. So once they had my passport, I was just screwed. I was just like, I didn't have any option.
Did they give it back at the end?
So at the end, they give it back to me, and I could get back to the bus, and we left on time. But we were super, super stressed, especially, I mean, Leah and I, because we had gone through like a really horrendous experience. But that was not the end of our problems, because on this very bus, which was long, it was 24 hours. We caught like a very nasty cold. Actually, Leah got a double pulmonary infection. So it was really, really bad. I got a single like pulmonary infection. We caught this thing on the bus. Everybody was coughing and it was, yeah, pretty nasty. And so the problem was we entered China being sick, like really sick. And we had to keep going because somebody was waiting for us in Hong Kong because we had sublet a flat in Hong Kong. So we had to keep going, even though we were sick as hell. Especially Leah, she had fever. She was sleeping all the time. She didn't want to eat anything, so she was very weak as well. And so we got really scared, to be honest. And we were very happy to have a good insurance with us. That's something we want to emphasize. It's like in those moments, very happy to be able to like go to a health center or something. So yeah, we got really sick at that time. It was it was pretty bad. Also, so we were sick. We were running late because we had to go like move fast to Hong Kong. And also, as we were going through Xinjiang, there were like some spies actually coming to us, just checking where we were going. It was nothing.
Wait, I'm hearing so much. Okay, wow. Okay, so first you have all of these problems at the location for the start of your bus. In the bus, you're getting sick, and then you cannot just put a hold on this one place you have to go to. You cannot just be like, okay, let's take 3 days for ourselves, go to the hospital, the Airbnb can wait.
The thing is, so it was not really an Airbnb. That's the problem. It was a proper flat that we had to rent in Hong Kong. And the thing is, Hong Kong is one of the most expensive places on this planet, rent-wise. So we were like, every day that we spend out of the place is literally just money that we're throwing away. And it was like really a lot of money. So also, like, Leah worked, she had signed a contract to work in Hong Kong as well as a pastry cook. And she, like, her boss was waiting for her to arrive on that precise date. So
yeah, but even sick, she couldn't work, right? I mean,
yeah. But we figured that probably by the time we would reach Hong Kong, we would get, recovered. We would recover.
Okay. And then you're sick, you're continuing the road, and there's spies now.
And now the spies, yeah. Oh, yeah, actually, I forgot one part of this anecdote. So we're still on this bus, right? The infamous bus, and we want to cross that border between Kazakhstan and China. We get to the border, and Leah, she's got no problem. She's fine. They let her through, and before you know it, she's in China. So we're very happy about it. The thing is that the officers, the border control officers, they they take my passport and they're like, "There's a problem with your passport. I'm gonna have to keep you waiting for a long time." I mean, they don't tell me how long, but it was a long time. I had to wait an hour and a half at the border, just sitting on a chair, and you can't do anything because you're in a border control zone, so you can't just read a book or check your phone or anything. So you're just sitting in this huge hole where it's in the middle of nowhere. You have to imagine it's full of Kazakh steppes, and there's just like this big border control place. It's completely random. And 1.5 hour later, they tell me that my passport has been checked and it's fine, and now I can go through. Thankfully, the bus that we were still like, it was a bus that was supposed to be waiting for us to go all the way to China. It did wait for me, even though I was running super, super late. So I get back to the bus and we're very happy because now we're in China. It's official. The thing is, at the exact same moment that I go back to the bus, there's a Chinese dude who hops on the bus as well. So there's no one just hopping randomly on a bus at this exact location because it's in the middle of nowhere. And this guy speaks perfect English. He's very young, he's very kind of friendly and everything. And we were, warned by like diplomats and people, just who had been to China before, that we had high chances of meeting spies. And so, yeah, and this guy was very friendly to us, but clearly he was, I mean, no one except the very rich, educated people in China speak English. So my theory is that probably the reason why they kept me waiting for like 1.5 hours was to ask this guy to come by and to hop on our bus just to keep an eye on us. And so yeah,
Okay,
it
so
was a lot.
just to know like background information, you already knew that in China there's a big chance of like having spies looking at you. Was it something specifically for that time, or is it something that everybody, like every Westerner traveling by public transport to China, is like directly going to be confronted with this?
Not really, not exactly. It really depends. Some of our friends who also traveled to China had the same experience, some other didn't. It depends. But like coming through the Xinjiang province, you have high chances of, because it's a very sensitive region.
Okay, and what are they scared of? Like, just to understand the whole concept of having a spy looking at you, what could you do wrong?
You can't really do anything wrong. I mean, except like speaking politics. I think we avoided like any sensitive topic with them. But no, mostly they're here to like just keep an eye on you, just to check if you're not like a journalist, or you're not trying to like kind of show like a dark side of China. For instance, people who would like to go to the Uyghur camps, like obviously you can't do that when you're in Xinjiang as a foreigner. So they just want to check that you're just kind of leaving the region, the province, pretty as soon as possible, sort of. But they're very nice to us. Like they help you, they answer your questions. They really offer the help to get a SIM card. That's what we did.
Isn't that SIM card you get from a spy like a tracked SIM card? Isn't that SIM card you get from a spy like a tracked SIM card?
It was definitely tracked. But yeah, from that moment on, we couldn't use our VPNs. So obviously the SIM card was just like screwing our phones. But it was still fun. It was, I guess, part of the experience. But again, it was not everybody got that experience. And spies were very kind to us. Like it was not, people just like hiding at the corner of a street. It was not anything like that. It was really just young people speaking perfect English and just popping up at random times.
Okay, and so that was the first time you got in contact with a spy, and you got into contact with multiple spies on your road through China then continuously.
Yeah, 2 or 3, maybe 4. We don't really know exactly, but we had, suspicions. We also encountered one sort of spy. It was at the border between Russia and Kazakhstan. So we reached that border, and there's a guy just who hops on the train. He joins us in cabin in our couch. Oh, yeah, coach. Sorry, and he starts speaking to us in English, which for a Russian person, it's not very common either. And he starts asking us questions about the war in Ukraine, and we're like, aren't you supposed to just be like neighbor in this coach? Like, and so he keeps going, and we're just like avoiding any sensitive question. And finally, we ask him like, "You're not going to stay with us in this coach, or are you?" And he's like, "No, no. Actually, I'm the border patrol. I'm like the border control guy." And he was just dressed as a civilian, so we couldn't tell. It was very kind of shocking, and especially at the end, he's like, "Now, may I see your phones?" And obviously, you cannot refuse that sort of proposal. So you just hand your phone to him, and it just scrolls through your like photos just to see if you have anything against Russia or Putin or that sort of things.
Okay, so but
Yeah.
what kind of pictures would even be wrong? I'm thinking about like I don't wouldn't even know like you're taking a picture of the wrong thing. You don't even know that this picture isn't allowed to be made, and then it's already like a signal to them that you're having bad intentions. But you cannot know this as a traveler who doesn't have necessarily bad intentions.
Yeah, yeah. Just just to be sure, we deleted all the pictures like that we took of like, for instance, graffitis that we took in Tbilisi, Georgia. In Georgia, there was a lot of anti-Russian graffitis on the street, so we made sure to delete all of them. Also, if you take pictures in like an anti-Russia demonstration, for instance, all those pictures we deleted them.
So delete means you uploaded them in the cloud somewhere and then you deleted them, or you deleted them forever and ever?
That's a good question. I think we just wanted to make sure that they would not find them, and I think we deleted them like for good.
Okay. So no WhatsApp message with those pictures can be found anymore either.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, okay, okay.
A lot for this part, the specific part between Kazakhstan and Russia, all the people we know have had the same experience with their phones checked, that sort of things.
Okay. And then I was also wondering, because you were mentioning that you were doing this road because you're vegan and Leah is vegetarian. And I was wondering, were there any challenges food-wise on the road?
Yes, there were quite a lot of challenges food wise, especially in Central Asia, because it's a very meat oriented culture. There's a lot of horse consumption, mostly mutton actually. And the thing is that even in like vegetarian dishes, they tend to add a little bit of animal fat. Especially, they have a specific type of sheep we found. I forgot the name, especially in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. It's a funny sheep that has like a sort of like a very thick and round tail. That's like the continuation of its butt, so to speak. It's like a really big, bouncy butt. It's kind of like you should check it out on Google Images. It's pretty funny.
What is it called?
I have no idea. Just take like Kazakh sheep or something, and you will find this like big ass sheep.
Okay.
It's really random. And the thing is, this part is full of fat. And so what they do is that they just cut this part and they use it as like instead of oil, basically. It just replaces the oil in in all their dishes, giving every dish a very kind of strong mutton taste. And it kind of spoils the dish, but also for those who like mutton, it's pretty tasty. But at first it's like interesting, but then you like in every dish, even like pure veg like dishes, it smells like mutton. You're like, oh no, can't do it anymore.
So that's not vegan anymore. So you could actually not really live your vegan lifestyle the way you were used to it when you were there?
Yeah, yeah, I think that was the only kind of sort of exception, even though we tried as much as we could like to avoid just like even animal fat that. But sometimes you just order something, making sure that it wouldn't come with animal fat, and they'd still serve you with it. So in that case, you just take pieces of meat or that sort of thing, and you just eat your thing, because otherwise, it's very difficult. Also, what we had was we would always carry a bag of like legumes, like lentils or chickpeas or that sort of thing, like dried, so that in every guest house or hostel or anything, we could actually cook something with proteins because, especially in Central Asia, getting like plant-based proteins is pretty hard. So we would always carry something like that, which made our bags heavier, but still we were happy to be able to cook a lot.
Does soya have a lot of proteins actually?
Yeah, it does. It's a legume as well. But that's the thing. To get to the soya culture, you have to wait until you get to China, really.
Mm.
They had a little, like, bit of tofu at the very east of Kazakhstan. That was interesting. But mostly it was all in China and Taiwan, obviously, that we could actually have a soya feast every day. That was very pleasant. Like, food-wise, China and Taiwan were our favorite countries by far because it was very easy to get around being vegan in those countries.
Mm-hmm.
They could easily make like a veggie broth with noodles, like veggie dumplings. It's very tasty and very spicy too in China, especially. And
Yeah.
that's what we like.
And now we're talking about food. When you're there, you can go to a restaurant or you can eat out. But how did you manage food when you were on a long train ride or you were just traveling through different countries? You don't have so much time. You maybe don't know when it's gonna be the next time you're able to find a store. What were you eating on the road? And were there a lot of trains where there was like a restaurant?
Most of the trains, if not all of them, at least those who were longer than like maybe 3 hours. But the thing is that in most of the train restaurants, they serve meat or like animal products in general. So it was for us, it was virtually impossible to eat something decent and also affordable because on the trains it's pretty expensive usually, even in like Central Asian countries. So what we did is two things actually. We either did some meal prep, like we had some like lunch boxes that we would carry with us everywhere. And as soon as we got to hostels or that's sort of places, we would cook and store things in our lunch boxes for the train, the incoming train rides, and that was very convenient. And also, one thing that really saved our lives, I must admit, is the instant noodles. Instant noodles is like it's everything in China and in Taiwan. It's like everybody eats instant noodles on the train. It's an institution, and so you just get those big boxes of instant noodles, and it's very convenient because you can actually put some boiling water straight into the box itself. It's a cardboard box, and then you just close it back. You wait a few minutes, and then it's ready.
I was gonna say I know instant noodles from festivals.
True, yeah. But there is like another level. Yeah, it's
Yeah. But does that also mean that there's like hot water in the train? So you bring your own noodles and then you can use the hot water, or you buy the noodles in the train?
you can actually bring everything you want, and there is free hot water in virtually all the trains we took, starting from Turkey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a very typical Soviet slash Russian thing. It's called samovar. Traditionally, it's some sort of a big boiling pan that's heated up by the coal that used to run the trains. But now it's just the diesel of the trains that heats up the water, and it's for free. Yeah, you can get it anywhere. And in China, they also have their own some sort of like hot water dispensers. So very very convenient. That's something we don't have in France, and that's a shame.
Yeah. And I was also wondering, now that we're talking about water, did you also have a lot of access to potable water?
Depends on which country. Unfortunately, most of Central Asia relies on plastic bottles because the tap water is not drinkable. In China, it's more or less the same. But in China, they have a really, really big culture of just drinking like boiled water or tea. So that's what we did for most of our journey. We were really just like heavy on tea all the time. Yeah, no, we were very happy to get back to Europe afterwards and have access to drinkable water again. It was like, phew. But one
Yeah.
thing that I would recommend that we didn't do, unfortunately, and that we should have done, is to buy those live straws, like what they call it.
I was actually just gonna tell you, like, I've got a live straw. It's really convenient. And I talked to a bicycle traveler who traveled through several countries in Africa, and she went all the way down. And she says that she's using this live straw really to make her water potable, and she never had any problem. The only time she had a problem with her live straw is when she changed her water for her live straw, and then she changed it with the water she was going to use to take a shower. So she accidentally drank the shower water and took a shower with the potable water.
That's very chic.
Yeah, but it's a sign that the straw doesn't work.
Yeah.
I actually also want to talk about the more beautiful times on the road as well. What were the top 3 maybe train rides you enjoyed the most?
Yeah, maybe first of all, maybe let me say that. So I've been talking a lot about all the kind of difficulties and like scary stuff, like going through Russia or that sort of things, or entering China through Xinjiang. But honestly, we didn't have any really serious trouble security wise during the whole trip, and we're very happy about it. And also just remember that we're not really big adventurers. Like we're really just like low key travelers that we do it on like vacations, just like anybody else. But we don't have a big experience in taking trains and long distance travels. So that being said, I would say the top 3 trains. The most obvious one was the Doğu Expressi that I mentioned earlier, the one that crosses Turkey, because it's just insane. Like what you see, you just go through like red canyons, and that makes you feel like you're in like, I don't know, Western US, or like it's like Grand Canyon sort of. And this was also the experience of this train is really unique because there's like this restaurant wagon is just amazing. You just spend your time drinking tea, like black tea with a lot of sugar, just like it in Turkey, and you just like stare at the window, and that's all you do basically during 24 hours. You're just sitting at the restaurant, and you just like drink super cheap tea and watching the scenery go by. So that was probably one of the top 3. One maybe another one that's very unique is a train that we took in Uzbekistan on the way back. So that was between Nukus. It's a pretty sad town in western Uzbekistan, and Bainu, which is at the border with Kazakhstan, between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. So it's a train that crosses the Uzbek desert. So when I say desert, I don't mean like dune desert. I mean like a very flat and sad and pale steppe desert. But the thing is, so it's a long train as well. It's like probably 15 hours. And the thing is that so it's a day train. So 15 hours on in a daytime is very long and boring. And so the thing is that everybody's bored. So everybody kind of laughs and speaks and plays games and everything. And so you get to really interact with the locals, even though you don't speak a word of Russian, or Kazakh or Uzbek, because they're all very friendly, and we're so crammed in this train because it's called a Platskart. It's a Russian word for like a train that doesn't have any doors. Basically, it's like a big dome on a train, and so it's crammed as hell. Literally, all the beds are like occupied by people who just sits on the bed even though it's not their seat. It's just a big mess, like a very happy mess, and it's really unique. You get those people selling dried smoked fish on the train, and they'll stay with you on the train. It's not like just hop on the train at the station and then leave. They just stay with you, just like selling fish and rice and everything. And you feel like you're in a market that's like on wheels, literally. So it was very funny, this one.
What is that train called? Does it have a name?
I don't think it has a name. It's just notorious among tourists because a lot of people have had the same experience as us. It's just so from Nukus to Bainu, Beyneu.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the third most beautiful ride?
It's a difficult one. I would tend to say that it's not a train ride, but it's still a very unique one as well. It's the ferry from Fuzhou to Taiwan, because it's actually not a direct ferry. You have to go through some islands that belong to Taiwan before you get to Taiwan main island. It's called Matsu Islands. So you get to take 2 ferries. First one that lasts 2 hours, and a second one that lasts one night, basically. And it's a very nice ride because you're only with locals who commute between mainland China and Taiwan, and just reaching Taiwan by boat was just so incredible as an experience. Yeah, it was also because it was the end of our journey, so we felt really kind of it felt like an achievement for us.
I also was wondering, what was the experience like the first day you left from your home, and then the last day, the moment you arrived to your final destination?
Well, it felt unusual because, as I said, that we had never gone through anything like this before, anything just as long. It was very exciting at first, especially because we were going through Europe and even like parts of Europe that we didn't know. Like, I don't know, Romania. We had never gone through Romania, and it was really, really like a nice discovery. So yeah, we were very excited. We were still like in very good shape when we left because we didn't know what it felt like to carry the like our 20 kg bags by then.
So maybe a little bit like not afraid of the unknown, a little bit naive.
Bit naive. I think also we didn't put too much pressure on ourselves because we knew that it would be a long journey and that there was a high chance that we would not make it to Hong Kong slash Taiwan because we already knew that most likely we couldn't take the ferry through the Caspian Sea. We had no idea, whether we would enter China easily or not. So we were like, if we get to Georgia, it's already like a very good experience and it's a good start. So that I think that was the feeling when we left.
Yeah, and then fast forward to the final day, you're arriving, you're there in Taiwan.
I think it was even more striking when we reached Hong Kong because so by then we thought it was actually a final destination. And funny enough, we actually reached Hong Kong by metro, not by train, not by plane or anything. We reached it by metro because there's actually a very high speed metro line that goes from Shenzhen, which is in mainland China, to Hong Kong. And we were on a budget. So we were figuring out that taking a metro was much cheaper than taking the high speed train. So we took this metro, and at the end, we would literally get out of the metro station by just like any local, so through the exit, the classic exit, and you just find yourself amongst these huge ass buildings and this like kind of this stink in the air because Hong Kong is a very kind of filthy city. Like
It stinks. I arrived.
yeah, it was kind of like but it was mostly a shock because the smell was different, the height of the buildings was different, the people were different. There were also a lot of internationals suddenly, which we didn't see any in mainland China. So everything was a shock. And then we just walk a bit to the harbor because Hong Kong is divided into two parts and it has a harbor in between. And so we could see the skyline from the harbor, and it was just like beautiful, and we felt like, well, we made it. That was very moving for us. I think we shed a tear too.
I can imagine. I can imagine that arriving to your final destination must feels like, wow, we did it. It's a liberation. It's like the whole baggage you carried along the way finally falling off your shoulder, literally, and in your mind. And you were mentioning earlier that you were on a budget. Can you share some information about how you were able to finance this journey? Because I feel like a lot of people would be like, okay, wow, this sounds like a dream. It could be, I wish I would be able to do that, but I don't think I'm able to do that because I'm not able to financially support myself during this journey. How was the financial aspect for you?
Yeah. So we did all the maths and everything. So we calculated that the cost of the train tickets and also including the ferry tickets to Taiwan. So from Paris to Taiwan, it costed us 680 euros per person. So it's both expensive and not so expensive, given that like I think if you take a plane, I think you can get a ticket for like maybe 300 euros, something like that. So
Wait, did I understand it right? 680 euros from France to Taiwan.
Only with the train tickets, yes. And buses, and I mean, only transportation, basically.
Okay, so you counted the Interrail tickets, you have the buses, you've got a ferry. That's still, like, I was expecting almost more.
Yeah, me too, actually. We were surprised when we did the maths. It's still like probably almost twice as expensive as taking a plane. But then, if you're comparing things that, doesn't really compare because taking a flight, just like you said, was just like just close your eyes and then you open it and you're in another world. While on the train, you still get to see all those wonderful places and everything. So that was for the transportation wise. Then basically our objective was to stay under 25 euros per day per person, all included: transportation, food, accommodation, etc., tourism visits. And so, to answer your question, what we did was we had some savings from before, but also we worked along the way. In Hong Kong, I worked for a vegan restaurant called Wanaka, which is amazing. And Leah worked for a French pastry cook. So that was very helpful. We also hosted some workshops on climate change in various places along the way. And that was also very helpful to get some money alongside just training people in like raising awareness about these topics in countries that usually don't have any access to this piece of information. Yeah, so I think if you count 25 euros per day, you're pretty good to go.
And do you think in the end you probably spent as much money as the money was coming in? Or did you actually spend more than what was your income during that period?
No, I think we stayed under this threshold of 25 euros, yeah. Funny enough, actually, if you do the math, you just realize that if had we stayed in France, we would have paid more on a daily basis than the 25 euros that we would spend on the trip. Even though obviously you don't get as much money when you're traveling than when you stay in France, where you have your own job and everything. But just to give you an idea, you don't spend that much abroad.
Yeah. In Germany, little side note, in Germany, there is a guy, I think he's a student. I chatted with him on Instagram and he travels through Germany. He has like a Bahncard 100, which is like a train ticket which you can use all the trains all the time. And he sleeps in the trains. And he says it's cheaper to sleep on the train, work from the train. There's a lot of internet in the train, so it's really good. With this train card, you also have access to some business rooms, because most of the time it's like business people buying these expensive tickets. And basically for him, he did the math and he said like it's cheaper to live a whole year in the train. Of course, it has to be a mentality as well, but it's cheaper to live in the train and support your life that way than to rent an apartment in the place where you would normally live. And then at the same time, he's seeing a lot of things, he's experiencing so much. People can have a lot of things to say about that, but still when you're doing the math, it's crazy to realize that. And it's crazy to hear that it's actually almost the same for you, that it's almost cheaper to go abroad than to just stay where you live. But that again says a lot about the countries where we're from, and it's not the same for everybody. Yeah.
And also, I think what's interesting is that even like, okay, forget about just like a trip all the way to Hong Kong, even for like shorter trips, like even Italy, it would cost us, way less to actually just buy a train ticket to Italy, because it saves us, it saves the money for the hostel that we would have had to pay otherwise. So even for short distances, taking night trains is really convenient, sort of, because you skip all the hostels that you would have to pay for otherwise.
Yeah. I would love to have the possibility to talk even much longer about night trains, because I had good and bad experiences with night trains. I think it's an amazing opportunity, but it can also be tricky to fall asleep.
Yeah, that's true. Especially in some countries that we had to go through, like China, people actually smoke on night trains.
Oof.
And when you end up like next to the smoking compartment. It gets very smoky at night. And especially when you're sick, that's not nice. That's not very nice.
No. Yeah, I had it late last time. I was traveling between Belgium and Germany, and I was on the night train as well to Halle, which was finally going to Berlin as well. And I was sitting next in a sleeping cabin next to another sleeping cabin, but they had like their own personal toilet. And I think somebody was sick. I don't know what happened, but they went to the toilet and they flushed the toilet during the night. And every time they flushed the toilet, I was waking up. And I really didn't, like, I slept for 2 hours, woke up, 2 hours, woke up. Was a terrible night. I was happy to arrive home.
But honestly, I mean, I was happily surprised with the quality of the night trains on the way. I thought it would be very kind of dusty and very dirty and everything, but most of them were very decent, just as decent as the French night trains. And we hopped on the most luxurious night train ever. It was from Russia to Kazakhstan, actually. It was crazy. Like, it was just so, it was very cheap. It was like 30 euros per person, but it was just also clean. And we had like a private like cabin for ourselves. There was like a shower in the toilets. Everything was like crystal, like clean. It was perfect.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay. And we were earlier talking about financial aspect. I'm also wondering, because it's a long trip, did you also try to find sponsors for your journey? How did that work?
Yeah. Yeah, we spent the entire summer before the trip trying to find some sponsors, and that's actually what kept us busy on the trains, because we had to work for the sponsors. So we eventually found three sponsors. The first one was French media, online media called Horail. Yeah, I think in English that's something like that. Horail. And so it's a media dedicated to train travel, and they offered us two free interrail passes, one for the way in and another one for the way back. So that was very, very helpful because, as you know, interrail passes are still quite costly. Yeah. The second one was Inveja, which is a French like medium-sized company based in Nantes, and they specialized in plant-based proteins, especially in flours, just legumes, that sort of things. And they were very interested in the project because of the whole plant-based aspect of it. And finally, our insurance was also one of our sponsors. And it was nice because we got it for free. And in exchange, we would like actually communicate about them on social media. So yeah, we got really lucky sponsor wise, I think.
Yeah. And you were able to use your insurance as well, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Very good promo over there. Okay, amazing. Now, to round up our conversation, actually, I wanted to also ask you what was the ecological footprint of your whole trip? Because we're talking about it in a way that, well, it's important to travel sustainably. You decided to travel by train for ecological reasons. Can you share some numbers if you have them? Like how much of your carbon footprint you saved by traveling by train instead of going to take the airplane?
So yeah, we did the maths on this aspect as well. And so one flight from Paris to Taipei, Taiwan, emits around 5 tons of CO2 equivalent per person. And what we found was that like the most direct way to get from Paris to Taiwan without flying, so by train, buses, and ferry, only emits 1 ton of CO2 equivalent per person. So it's 5 times less, approximately, which is significant. It's not, I mean, it's really significant, actually. But it also says that 1 ton is not, it's not like, it's still pretty big in terms of climate impact that you can have. It's half of the 250 carbon budget per person. So it's really a lot. And that also means that it's not a trip that you can do on a yearly basis, obviously. It was for us, it was the trip of a lifetime, literally. And for our travel, so which was not exactly the most direct way to go from Paris to Taiwan, because we also went a bit around to see some sightseeing and everything, to do some sightseeing. It was, I think, around from 3 to 4 times less carbon emitted than flying.
Okay. And was it difficult to do the maths on that? What tool did you use? Because it seems like you figured it out, but if I'm starting my train journey and I want to compare it to my flights, I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah, it was actually very difficult because it's not like in Europe where you get a lot of data on like different transportation modes. As soon as you reach Central Asia or even Russia, the data gets tricky and very kind of unclear. So my previous job was to calculate that carbon footprints in general. So it was easy, so to speak, for me, but it was
Oh,
still a lot of work.
I will contact you if I need something.
We actually put up like a very simple tool to help people calculate their own carbon footprint. So I can give you that also.
Yeah, you can please send it to me and I can put it in the show notes for anybody who's interested.
Sure.
What can you just pitch me the tool? What does it do exactly?
So it's just an Excel sheet, really, but you just enter your destinations. I mean, the different steps of your journey, transportation mode, the number of kilometers, and then it automatically calculates the carbon footprint of each step, and it adds up to the whole, and it compares it to the equivalent. If you were to take a plane, basically.
Interesting. Okay. I'm gonna be curious to use that, and that's interesting. How cool that you made it, and you're also sharing it with the people. That's really nice.
I'm like, it was a lot of work for me. I was like, I might as well just like share it to people because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
Yay.
So, I was telling earlier about, diesel trains, because obviously in Central Asia and even in like China, you still get either diesel trains or trains running on electricity that's made with fossil fuels. So I was scared personally that our carbon footprint would be much higher, and like would be much higher than the one that we actually had, or that was almost as high as like taking a plane. But it's still impressively, it means that as soon as you have a shared mode of transportation, even though it still runs on diesel, which is not ideal for sure, it's still much more interesting climate wise than like taking a plane.
Okay. Yeah. And now to round up our conversation, actually, I wanted to ask you what would you tell to a listener who's now interested in trying long distance travel, but they're not sure whether they should really start doing it? Can you give them a pep talk to really think about, okay, I'm gonna plan this trip, I'm gonna do this?
Well, yeah, something that I was struck by is that it actually doesn't take that long to prepare anything like that, because it's a very day-to-day experience. So given that everything is more or less unpredictable in that sort of journey, it doesn't make a lot of sense to like calculate your itinerary, step by step for the next 9 months, because obviously that's not what's going to happen, and our experience showed that too. So I would really say, well, just pack your bag, everything you need. We can also share some. We've got documents of like what to bring on a long distance trip like this. Pack your bag. Just maybe buy your tickets for the European part, because that's where it's actually expensive. You're good to go, because the rest is improvisation. Is buying tickets on the spot, getting the right information, like the most up to date information from the locals. It's pretty easy. Is if you're not looking for sponsors, at least.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Now, at the end of every episode, I have very quick questions that I'm asking all of my interviewees. And I'm wondering if you're ready to start with a quick fire round.
I am.
Okay, let's go. How old are you now?
I'm 29.
How old were you the first time you traveled to another continent?
I was probably 15.
What's the longest time you've been away from home?
9 months.
Would you rather see a lot of places or get to know one place really well?
Hmm. The latter, the seeing one plays really well. Though that's not what we did on the trip, but yeah.
Would you rather save money on accommodation or pay for a good bed?
Save money on accommodation.
What word would you teach a foreigner who wants to learn your language? And what's your language?
French, I guess. Merci. That's the best. Thank you.
What can't you travel without?
Well, I might seem like a nerd on this one, but everywhere I go, I'm bringing a small book of poems, French poetry, because that's something you don't really get bored of reading. You know, it's something you can read again and again. So that's pretty convenient when you're traveling far away.
That's beautiful. What's your favorite travel song or a song that you like to listen to when you're traveling?
For us during this trip, it was Tracy Chapman's "Fast Car," which is paradoxical because
I'm on a fast car. Okay. Now, why do you travel?
honestly, to eat, to eat good food.
Okay. And I've got one more additional question. What's the most beautiful thing about train traveling?
The landscapes by far.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this. I really enjoyed listening to all of your stories. I think whew, it's a lot. You lived through it all. We explored it now. To give you a little shout out, where can my listeners go and find you?
Yeah. So you can actually find all our adventures, like all the videos that we took, all the photos that we took on this travel on our Instagram page, which is called, it's in French, sorry. It's called La Route du Soja. But maybe you can put a link on the.
Yeah, I will put a link in the show notes, definitely. And I think for as far as of course, I speak French, but I would also say that the images speak for themselves. So you're showing so much beautiful footage. So even if you don't speak French, I think it's still very inspiring to have a look at your profile.
And on the very top of the Instagram page, we've pinned the itinerary. So, you know, no matter if you speak French or not, you can still find all the steps of our travel that can be helpful.
Yeah, amazing. Yes, yes, yes. That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clara, for having me. Merci pour les questions. C'était très bien.
This was Travel Devil, brought to you by me, your host, Clara Francken. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to continue the conversation or suggest any future guests, you can go to my Instagram @ClaraFrancken. Take care, and I will see you next Thursday.